My girlfriend told me I need space to find myself, so you need to move out for a month while I was paying all our bills. So I called the landlord, transferred the lease entirely to her name, and watched her discover what financial independence really costs. I am Mason, 29, an accountant in Austin who spent the last 18 months thinking I had found someone worth building a future with. Piper, 26, works in social media coordination, or worked, since she has been between opportunities for the past 3 months, while I have covered our $1,800 rent, utilities, groceries, and most of our date nights. Looking back now, I can see how gradually I would become her personal financial safety net. It started with small requests during her job search, evolved into me covering more shared expenses temporarily, and eventually became a dynamic, where I was essentially funding her lifestyle while she explored what finding herself really meant. When we moved in together 8 months ago, the lease went in my name, only because Piper's credit score was in the low 500s from some college mistakes she had made with store credit cards and a defaulted car loan. I didn't mind at the time. I made solid money as a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm. She was actively job hunting, and relationships require mutual support during tough periods. What I didn't realize was that I had established a pattern that would slowly erode my financial boundaries and self-respect. The signs had been building for weeks, but I had been too emotionally invested to see them clearly. Piper became increasingly distant, spending more time on her phone and going out with friends multiple nights a week. Her Instagram stories featured a lot of cryptic quotes about personal growth and authentic living, along with frequent appearances by Trevor, a fitness instructor she would met at some networking event. Trevor was everything. I wasn't spontaneous where I was planned, artistic where I was analytical, free-spirited where I was responsible. Piper's posts showed them at expensive restaurants I definitely wasn't paying for, always tagged with Trevor and her single girlfriends, who seemed to have unlimited budgets for brunch and wine tastings. When I would ask about her job search, Piper would get defensive in ways that felt new and uncomfortable. Creative positions are hard to find, Mason. I cannot just settle for some corporate drone job that kills my soul. Meanwhile, I was working 50-hour weeks during tax season to keep us afloat while she attended yoga classes and explored her artistic side through photography workshops that somehow never led to paid work. The financial pressure was mounting, but I kept telling myself this was temporary. Piper would find the right opportunity, start contributing again, and we had returned to a more balanced partnership. I was making decent money, around $75,000 annually, but supporting 2 people in Austin on that salary, while building savings for our future, was stretching me thin. Friday night, she dropped the bomb I should have seen coming, but somehow never prepared myself for. Mason, we need to talk, she said, settling onto our couch with that serious expression that usually preceded requests for money or emotional labor. I have been doing a lot of thinking lately about personal growth and what I need to become my authentic self. I braced myself for another conversation about pursuing her passion projects, while I handled the practical responsibilities of adult life. I need some space to figure out who I am outside of this relationship. I want you to move out for a month so I can have time alone to connect with my inner truth and understand what direction my life should take. The words hit me like cold water. After 8 months of covering every expense while she explored her creativity, she was asking me to leave so she could continue her journey of self-discovery in the apartment I was paying for. You want me to move out of our apartment? It is not permanent, she assured me, reaching for my hand in that practiced way she had perfected over months of getting me to agree to things that primarily benefited her. I just need time to be by myself, to understand what I really want from life. The apartment lease was in my name. The utilities were in my name. The internet, the cable, the renter's insurance, all in my name because of her credit issues. And now she wanted me to leave while continuing to fund her month-long retreat from responsibility. I heard myself saying, I understand. The accommodating response came automatically, years of conflict avoidance and people-pleasing taking over. But as I watched Piper's face light up with relief, something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, I started thinking like an accountant, instead of a love-struck fool who had been systematically taken advantage of. That night, lying in bed next to someone who had just asked me to fund her month-long vacation from our relationship, I began calculating exactly what this break was going to cost everyone involved. The numbers were startling, but not as startling as the realization that I had been enabling someone who saw my generosity as weakness to exploit, rather than love to appreciate. What I discovered over the next few days would fundamentally change how I understood relationships, boundaries, and my own worth. Update 1. The conversation with my best friend Jake became the catalyst for everything that followed. Sometimes you need someone outside your situation to point out truths you have been too emotionally invested to see clearly. Saturday morning found me sitting in Jake's kitchen, nursing coffee, and trying to process Piper's request. Jake's a lawyer who specializes in contract disputes, and he has this way of cutting through emotional manipulation to focus on legal and practical realities that is both brutal and necessary. "Let me get this straight," he said, leaning back in his chair with the expression he usually reserved for particularly ridiculous opposing counsel arguments. "She wants you to move out of your apartment so she can have space to find herself, but she expects you to keep paying rent while you are living somewhere else." "She didn't say that exactly," I replied, though even as I spoke, I realized how naive that sounded. "But I mean, the bills still need to be paid, right, Mason, whose name is on the lease?" "Mine. Her credit was too bad when we applied." Jake's eyebrows shot up in the way they did when he was about to deliver uncomfortable truths. "Dude, do you realize you hold all the cards here?" That question hung in the air like a revelation I had been too emotionally compromised to see. For 3 months, I had been so focused on being supportive, while Piper struggled with unemployment, that I had forgotten basic legal realities about tenant rights and financial responsibilities. "What do you mean?" "She has no legal right to ask you to leave your own apartment. But more importantly, if you choose to leave, you can transfer all the lease responsibilities to her, the utilities, the rent, everything. It is your choice entirely." Piper wanted space to explore whatever was happening with Trevor and her newfound spiritual journey. Fine, but she could explore it while taking full financial responsibility for her choices, for the first time in our relationship. 30-day notice for utilities. Jake continued, pulling out his phone to verify Texas rental law. "Lease transfer requires landlord approval, credit check for the new tenant, usually first and last month's rent as security." Given her employment situation and credit score, I started laughing, not from cruelty but from the sheer irony of it all. Piper wanted to find herself, and I was about to give her the perfect opportunity to discover exactly who she was, when she couldn't rely on my financial support as a safety net. The mathematical reality was stark. Our monthly expenses totaled about $2,100, $1,800 for rent, $200 for utilities, plus internet and cable. Piper's savings account, which I had glimpsed during a recent bank trip when she needed help with a deposit, contained maybe $800. Even if she qualified for the lease transfer, she had need nearly $4,000 up front just to complete the process. But before taking any action, I spent the weekend really examining our relationship dynamic and my own patterns. I had been raised to be generous, supportive, to put others' needs before my own. These were good qualities, but somewhere along the way, I would let them become tools for people to take advantage of my kindness. Monday morning, I called our landlord, Mr. Rodriguez. He was a decent guy who had always been straightforward with us, and I explained that my girlfriend would be taking over the lease. "She will need to qualify independently," he said matter-of-factly. "Credit check, employment verification, security deposit. Given what you have told me about her situation, I would probably require first and last month's rent up front, plus a double security deposit to offset the credit risk." I did the math while he spoke. Even if Piper somehow qualified, she had need nearly $5,400 just to complete the transfer. 3 months rent plus deposits and application fees. Her unemployed status would make employment verification impossible, and her credit score would trigger the maximum security requirements. The next few days became a strategic operation that felt strangely therapeutic. I had spent months accommodating someone else's needs while ignoring my own financial security and emotional well-being. Now I was taking concrete steps to protect both while teaching someone the difference between support and enablement. I contacted the utility companies one by one, requesting 30-day notice to transfer accounts to Piper's name. Each representative explained their requirements: credit checks ranging from $50 to $100, connection fees, security deposits for customers with poor credit that could total $400, $600 across all services. I documented everything carefully, creating a comprehensive breakdown of exactly what Piper's independence would cost. The storage unit rental came next. I had accumulated a lot of belongings over 18 months of cohabitation, and I wasn't about to leave them behind during Piper's journey of self-discovery. Jake offered his couch temporarily, and I found a furnished short-term rental downtown that actually cost less than my portion of our shared expenses had been running. As I organized my belongings, I found myself reflecting on how I had gotten to this point. Growing up, my parents had taught me that relationships required sacrifice and compromise, but they would also taught me that respect and contribution should be mutual. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten the second part while emphasizing the first. By Thursday, I would quietly moved most of my important possessions, while Piper was at one of her creative workshops. She hadn't asked about logistics or timing for my departure, apparently assuming I would handle all the practical details while she focused on her spiritual growth. The assumption itself revealed everything wrong with our dynamic. Friday evening, exactly 1 week after her initial request, I sat her down with a comprehensive folder containing all the paperwork she had need for her new independent lifestyle. "I have been thinking about what you said," I began, watching her face for reactions. "You are right that you need space to find yourself, so I have arranged for you to have all the space you need." I spread out the documents on our coffee table: lease transfer applications, utility transfer forms, contact information for every service provider we had shared, along with a detailed breakdown of monthly costs and transfer requirements. "These will help you complete your journey toward authentic independence," I said, maintaining the spiritual language she had been using. "All the bills are being transferred to your name, and the lease will be entirely your responsibility starting next month." The confusion on her face was immediate and profound. "Wait, what? I thought you had keep paying rent while you stayed somewhere else for a few weeks." That moment crystallized everything wrong with our dynamic. Piper had genuinely expected me to finance her break from our relationship, supporting her apartment while she figured out whether she wanted to keep me around. The entitlement was breathtaking in its scope and casual cruelty. "You said you needed space to find yourself," I replied calmly. "I am giving you complete independence, financial independence, emotional independence, the works." What followed was 3 hours of the most educational conversation I had ever had about entitlement, manipulation, and what happens when someone's comfortable assumptions about their safety net suddenly disappear. Update 2. The last 3 weeks have been a masterclass in watching someone's priorities undergo radical reconstruction when reality replaces comfortable assumptions. Piper's journey of self-discovery took some fascinating turns once she realized what independent living actually costs. For the first week after our conversation, Piper seemed confident she could handle the transition. She posted Instagram stories about embracing new challenges and growth through adversity, with sunset photos and inspirational quotes that suggested she was thriving in her newfound autonomy. The posts radiated the energy of someone who would successfully shed an unwanted burden and was exploring exciting new possibilities. Trevor appeared in her stories more frequently during this period. Dinner photos at trendy Austin restaurants, gym selfies, hiking adventures around the Greenbelt that looked expensive and time-consuming. Her social media presence suggested she was living her best life, free from the constraints of boring financial responsibility and domestic routine. I spent that week settling into my temporary downtown rental, a furnished one-bedroom that cost $1,200 monthly, significantly less than my share of our previous shared expenses had been running. The freedom was intoxicating in ways I hadn't anticipated. No one questioning my work schedule, no one expecting me to cover their entertainment costs, no one making me feel guilty for focusing on my career and financial security. For the first time in months, I could save money instead of watching it disappear into someone else's lifestyle choices. I could make financial decisions based on my own goals rather than accommodating someone else's expensive hobbies and social activities. But the real test was still coming. Wednesday of the second week, everything changed. I was reviewing client portfolios when my phone buzzed with a text from Piper. "Mason, Why did I get an electric bill for $180? It is in my name, and I don't understand what happened. I set down my coffee and typed back. The utilities got transferred like we discussed. You should be receiving all the bills now according to the 30-day notice schedule. But I thought you meant eventually, not right away. And why is it so expensive? The follow-up text came minutes later. Also got internet bill for $85. And something from the gas company for $95. This doesn't make sense. I didn't respond immediately. Part of me felt satisfaction, watching someone else grapple with the financial realities I had been managing alone for months. Another part felt genuine sadness that our relationship had devolved into this strategic maneuvering instead of honest communication about shared responsibilities and mutual respect. Friday brought the lease transfer meeting with Mr. Rodriguez. Piper's call came within 2 hours. Mason, this is completely insane. The landlord wants $5,400 up front, first month, last month, and double security deposit because of my credit score. Plus I need employment verification, which I obviously cannot provide since I don't have a job. Her voice carried a panic I had never heard before. The sound of someone whose comfortable assumptions were colliding with immovable reality. For 3 months, she had lived in a bubble where financial stress was my problem to solve, while she pursued personal growth and creative fulfillment. Maybe you could ask Trevor to help, or find a roommate, or look for somewhere more affordable. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Trevor's not really in a position to help with rent, she finally admitted. He has got his own place, and his trainer salary isn't exactly huge, and this was supposed to be temporary anyway. I thought you understood that. The admission revealed the fundamental disconnect in our understanding of the situation. Piper had viewed this as a consequence-free exploration period, like taking a sabbatical from responsibility while someone else maintained her infrastructure. Sunday evening brought the call I had been expecting. Okay, I am ready. You can come back now. I found what I was looking for during this break. I screenshot the text before responding. After 18 months of relationship, she had condensed her profound journey of self-discovery into exactly 2 weeks. Coincidentally, right when the first month's bills arrived, and the lease transfer requirements became clear. That is wonderful that you found yourself so quickly, I replied. What did you discover? I realized that I value our relationship and I don't need space anymore. I am ready to work on us together and make this work. The conversation that followed revealed everything I needed to know about Piper's definition of personal growth. She had expected me to maintain our shared life in suspended animation, while she explored other options, then returned gratefully when she decided I was still her best choice. Actually, I found myself too during this break. I told her, I found that I like living within my means, making my own financial decisions, and being with someone who values mutual contribution to our shared life. What does that mean exactly? It means I am not coming back, Piper. The lease transfer papers are being processed. You wanted independence, and now you have it completely. The hour-long conversation that followed included tears, accusations of cruelty, and promises to change that felt motivated more by immediate financial crisis than genuine personal growth. But change motivated by desperation isn't real development. It is damage control wearing the mask of enlightenment. Her mother, Linda, called me the next day, and that conversation provided the final piece of understanding I needed about the family system that had created Piper's entitled approach to relationships. Mason, Piper is devastated, Linda said. They suggested she had been solving her daughter's problems for decades. Where is she supposed to get $5,400 for deposits and first month's expenses? She doesn't have that kind of money, Mrs. Whitmore. Your daughter asked me to leave so she could find herself, I replied calmly. I respected her wishes and gave her the independence she requested, but she made a mistake. She has learned her lesson now. She needs you to help her through this transition period. That conversation clarified something I had been struggling to articulate. Piper's support system, her family, her friend group, even Trevor, all operated under the assumption that other people existed to solve her problems when her choices produced uncomfortable consequences. The idea that actions have financial ramifications was genuinely foreign to everyone in her life. She needed me when she told me to leave, I explained. Now she needs to learn what accountability looks like in the real world. Linda's desperation was palpable. Cannot you just help her with rent for a few months while she gets back on her feet? She is your girlfriend, Mason. Was my girlfriend Mrs. Whitmore, and she chose to end our living arrangement to pursue personal growth. I am respecting that choice by ensuring she gets the full experience of independence she was looking for. The request confirmed that Piper's entitled approach to relationships was learned behavior, passed down through a family system that prioritized her comfort over her growth. Linda couldn't imagine her daughter facing natural consequences for her choices. Final update 6 weeks later. I am writing this from my new permanent apartment downtown, reflecting on how profoundly life can transform when you stop accepting treatment that contradicts your core values and financial well-being. The lease transfer saga reached its predictable conclusion after another month of bureaucratic reality. Piper lasted exactly 4 weeks trying to navigate the qualification process before the mathematical impossibility became undeniable. With no job, $800 in savings, and a credit score in the 500s, she couldn't meet even the most lenient rental requirements, even with Linda's attempted co-signing. The final straw came when Mr. Rodriguez explained that Linda would need to qualify as the primary leaseholder with Piper as an occupant, essentially making Linda financially responsible for her adult daughter's housing. Even Linda balked at taking on $1,800 monthly rent obligation for her unemployed daughter's Austin lifestyle. Piper's attempts to find alternative solutions revealed just how disconnected she had been from financial reality. She spent 2 weeks looking for roommates willing to cover her portion of rent in exchange for social media marketing help and creative energy. The Austin rental market was not interested in bartering artistic vibes for cash. Trevor disappeared completely once Piper's situation became complicated and expensive. Her social media posts shifted from inspirational quotes about personal growth to vague complaints about fake people and betrayal that her friends correctly interpreted as directed at everyone who wouldn't solve her housing crisis. She lasted 6 weeks total before moving back in with her parents in Round Rock, a 40-minute drive from the Austin lifestyle she had been trying to maintain. The retail job she finally accepted at a local boutique paid $12 an hour, barely enough to cover her portion of her mother's household expenses and the car payment she had been ignoring during her period of artistic exploration. Personal journey of financial boundaries and self-discovery life has a way of testing our understanding of generosity versus enabling revealing truths about both ourselves and others that we might prefer to avoid. What began as emotional devastation became the most profound period of personal growth I have ever experienced. After months of absorbing all financial responsibilities for someone who prioritized self-discovery over contribution, I faced a moment that crystallized everything wrong with our dynamic. She wanted space to find herself while I continued funding her journey of personal exploration. The audacity was breathtaking, but my response surprised even me. Setting financial boundaries felt terrifying at first. I had been raised to be generous, to put others' needs before my own, to view sacrifice as love. Somewhere along the way, those good qualities had become tools for manipulation. Walking away from that dynamic meant confronting uncomfortable truths about my own patterns of accommodation and conflict avoidance. The downtown apartment I had rented as temporary housing became permanent when I realized how much I valued the independence. At $1,200 monthly, it cost less than my previous shared expenses, leaving money for savings and personal goals I had abandoned. For the first time in 18 months, I could make financial decisions based on my priorities, rather than accommodating someone else's lifestyle choices. I had spent months walking on eggshells around financial stress, while absorbing all responsibility for our shared life. Living independently reminded me what it felt like to have generosity appreciated, rather than expected, to have financial stability respected, rather than exploited. 3 months later, I started dating Rebecca, a fellow accountant who approached relationships with mutual respect I had forgotten was possible. When we went out, she insisted on splitting costs or taking turns, covering expenses. She had her own savings goals, her own financial priorities, and her own sense of responsibility for her choices. The contrast was educational and healing. What struck me most was how different equal partnership felt compared to dependency dynamics. Rebecca considered my financial well-being alongside her own, viewing interdependence as mutual support rather than one-sided extraction. When she was between jobs for 6 weeks, she immediately adjusted her lifestyle and spending rather than expecting me to absorb her expenses. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about recognizing financial manipulation before it becomes systematic. The signs had been there from early in the previous relationship. The gradual increase in my financial responsibility, the expectation that my resources were available for her priorities, the lack of reciprocal consideration for my financial stress. Most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't measured by how much I am willing to sacrifice for someone who doesn't reciprocate that consideration. Healthy relationships require mutual respect, shared responsibility, and equal investment in each other's well-being. 6 months later, I am grateful for that painful Friday night conversation. She did help me find something valuable, the self-respect I had been missing, and the understanding that my financial stability and emotional well-being matter as much as anyone else's. She found herself responsible for her own choices. I found myself worthy of equal partnership. Both discoveries were exactly what we needed, even if only one of us learned to appreciate the lesson.